Well, we're going to talk to Juliana about a great piece of history that's not always touched upon, in fact, rarely touched upon, but she's put it into a novel form, and it's something you ought to read. Thank you, first of all, for stopping by.
Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure. City of the Sun. What's the City of the Sun? Is it Cairo?
It's almost Cairo. It's a suburb of Cairo.
Okay.
It's about 40 minutes by tram to Cairo, and the name of it, initially, it was Heliopolis, which means, in Greek, City of the Sun. And that's where I was born. So I thought it would be a good title for the book, since a lot happens in Heliopolis.
Really? Mm-hmm. Is there much of, or was there much of a Jewish community? Or is it a fiction?
Oh no, there was a very large Jewish community in Egypt. I mean, Jews have been in Egypt since biblical times, but by the early 20th century, you had already 80,000 Jews living there and flourishing there, if I may add.
Most of us don't have a grasp of Jewish Egyptian history. We know there's the Ben Ezra synagogue in Cairo, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm. There were 60 synagogues. There were 60 synagogues. There were 3 theaters, one in Yiddish. They had hospitals that took care of all those in need, no matter what their religion were. There were Jewish schools, there were youth clubs, there were all kinds of organizations. It was a very large and successful community, and perhaps it was the most successful Jewish community in the Arab world. It was quite a time, but I'm writing about 1941, of course, yeah.
Well, which is the advent of World War II, and kind of if you shift a little bit towards the other side of Africa, you remember the movie Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart.
Of course, how can I forget? Except that this was, I will say, 10 times more exotic.
Say, yeah. This book
yes.
is more exotic?
Yes, it's more exotic.
How is that?
Well, for one thing, it throws in a king and a palatial lifestyle that affected not just the king, but even the middle classes. There were parties after parties, there were lifeboats. It was an incredibly luxurious life at the time. And the period that I'm writing about, 1941, was specifically and particularly successful. But for over 100 years, there was a golden age in Egypt, in Cairo, in Alexandria, where all of these minorities, you know, the Jews and all of these foreigners, these Europeans, lived together harmoniously with one another and with the Arabs. And I don't think that there are any other country, including Iran, that had such a successful Jewish community. The Jews were basically an integral part of the entire infrastructure of a country. They were lawyers and doctors, of course, but they were athletes, they were movie stars, they were legislators. As a matter of fact, the chief rabbi of Cairo was a member of parliament. They helped draft the Egyptian constitution. They were inside the fabric of that society. And people don't know that. And I find that to be exceptional. And I had to write about this when I started doing research about this time and place. 100 years. I mean, can you imagine now Egypt, what it's like? I mean, it cannot even be tolerant to its Christian population.
Terrible.
Mm-hmm. But if it happened once, you know, it can happen again. I really do feel that politics hijacked the hearts of the Egyptian people. I mean, they are a very warm and welcoming people to this day. And it's extremely unfortunate that movements like Zionism and fundamentalism, I mean, they just all clashed. And it was the Muslim Brotherhood that started to bring and promote anti-Semitism in Egypt, where it did not exist among the people.
What's your statement? Why did you do this book? It's more than just selling a book. It's a personal commitment that you must have for your background.
Yes, it very much so. For me, I needed to understand my Egyptian roots. My family, we were expelled when I was 3 years old during the Suez Crisis of 1956, and we were lucky to have been able to go to France. My mother had a French passport, and my life was very uncertain and unstable as I was growing up. You know, we were refugees in France, and when all the Jews left Egypt, either because they were expelled or because they were forced to, or tortured, and they had no other choice than to leave, you know, they went all over the world. But my family went to France, and we tried the United States a couple of times, and then finally we moved here when I was 18 years old. And I never understood my Egyptian roots. I mean, they seem so complicated to me. My father was Italian. Mind you, but they were all born in Egypt, right? So my father was Italian, my mother was French. I had a grandfather who was born in Palestine, a grandmother in Lebanon. I have Moroccan blood. I do also have some Ashkenazi, you know, for good measure. It was like, I'm the United Nations, you know, I mean, it's like, who are we? And what were we doing there? So for me, it was an identity search, so to speak. You know, I kind of rejected my Arabic roots. I thought, I am French, of course, this is my language, this is my nationality. And then I became an American citizen, I am American, but part of me is culturally Arabic, and I came to terms with that. And I came to terms with the fact that we were there, and we did great there. And so this is, to me, it had that very special meaning.
We'll be back with more on Juliana after this.